Okay, here we go with chapter number 5 and number 6. If we can get that in about 15 minutes, I think we should be able to. Now, yesterday, or the last time I read, we learned about Never-Ending Mountain and the Old Man of the Moon. And Min Lee's got some questions to ask. Mainly, how can she change her fortune for her family? And so now we've got to figure out how. Oh, we've got to remember too, what was it or who was it that told her how to get to Never-Ending Mountain? Oh, you're right. It was the goldfish. And remember that the goldfish had told her this secret, mainly because Min Lee had let the goldfish go. And so the goldfish could swim the last of the rivers that she had not swum yet. So, chapter 5. The next morning, Min Lee felt as if her head was spinning with thoughts and plans. She was so busy thinking and plotting that she barely noticed her parents nodding sadly at each other when they saw the emptied goldfish bowl. And in the fields, when Min Lee worked as if in a daze, her parents said nothing about her slow and messy planting. When the sun began to set and Min Lee went home to make dinner, she quickly washed and made the rice. Then she set the table for 2 people, sat down and wrote this note. Dear Ma and Ba, I am going to Never-Ending Mountain to ask the Old Man of the Moon how I can change our fortune. I might be away for many days, but don't worry, I will be fine. When I come back, we will be able to fill our house with gold and jade. Love, your obedient daughter, Min Lee. The obedient part isn't completely true. Min Lee thought to herself as she knew that her parents would not be happy to find her gone. But it's not false either. They didn't say that I couldn't go, so I'm not being disobedient. Still, Min Lee knew that wasn't entirely right either, but she shook away her uneasy feelings and prepared for her journey. On a blanket, she put these things: a needle, a pair of chopsticks, her white rabbit rice bowl, a piece of dried bamboo, a hollow gourd full of water, a small knife, a fish net, some uncooked rice, a large pot, and the one remaining copper coin. Then she wrapped the blanket into a bag and tied it to her back, and took a last look at her shabby house. Through the windows, Fruitless Mountain stood like a shadow, but Min Lee closed her eyes and imagined the house shimmering with gold and the mountain jade green with trees, and she smiled. Then she opened the door and left. That's chapter 5. Chapter 6. As Min Lee left the house, she was afraid some of her neighbors would stop her and ask her what she was doing. She felt she must look mysterious with a large bag on her back and full of excitement. But no one noticed her. The neighbors kept sweeping their doorways, hanging their laundry, and preparing their dinner. A boy and girl continued their fight over a pretend feast of mud. When the mother called them for dinner, both of them refused to move, each clinging to their dishes of wet dirt. Min Lee had to smile at their foolishness. So Min Lee walked right out of the village without causing a second glance. At the edge of the village, she turned toward Fruitless Mountain. At the bottom of the mountain, she unwrapped her blanket and took out her knife, a needle, rice bowl, bamboo piece, and jug of water. Then, trying to remember all of the goldfish's instructions, she cracked off a piece of stone and rubbed it up and down the needle 99 times before tossing it back to the ground. And then she filled her rice bowl halfway with water and let the bamboo float on it. After that, she picked up the needle and looked at the white rabbit on her bowl. Okay, she said to the jumping rabbit, lead the way. And she placed the needle onto the bamboo, and like magic, the needle spun around, and Min Lee smiled. Thank you, Min Lee said to the painted rabbit. Now I'll follow where you want me to go. Some of you have probably figured out that she had made her own homemade compass, which any of us could do. Min Li picked up her things and carefully, holding the bowl in her hand, walked in the direction of the needle, past Fruitless Mountain. "Goodbye, Jade Dragon," Min Li said as she left. "When I come back, I will know how to make you happy again." Min Li walked, and the stony land slowly turned into forest. Even when the moon was high in the sky, she continued, "I want to make sure I walk far enough that if Ma and Ba begin to look for me, they can't find me." Min Li had said to herself, the fallen leaves made a soft carpet for her feet, and the night birds flew into the sky as she passed. Only when the sky lightened to gray and the sun began to peek over the horizon did Min Li sit down and rest against a tall tree. She had traveled deep into the forest, far from her village. She was so tired that she quickly fell asleep. Chapter 7. The sun had set and the moon was just beginning to rise in the sky when Ma and Ba returned home from the fields. Even though they could smell the steam from the rice cooking, they noticed that the house was strangely dark and quiet. "Why is Min Li sitting in the darkness?" Ma wondered as they approached the house. "Perhaps she is sad about giving up her goldfish," Ba said as he shook his head. "Can our fortune be any poorer?" Ma sighed. "We cannot even feed a goldfish for our daughter." But as Min Li's parents entered the house and read her note, Ma made a noise like a shrieking cat. "I spoke too soon," Ma cried. "Our fortune is now the worst, for our only daughter is gone." "Quiet, quiet, wife," Ba hushed her. "If we move quickly, we can find her and bring her back home." Ba hurriedly took out his cloth sack and gathered blankets and filled an empty bottle with water. "She has had almost half a day to travel ahead," he said. It might take us some time to find her." Ma watched him and then began to pack the cooked rice into a traveling box. But she continued to weep. "It's all those stories you told her," Ma sobbed. "She believed them, and now she is looking for fairy tales." Her words cut into Ba like slices from a knife, but even though his face was pained, he said nothing and continued to pack. His hands trembled as he tied the bag closed, but they were gentle when he put his hand on Ma's shoulder. "Let us go," he said. As they left the house, many of their neighbors poked their heads out of the doors. They had heard Ma's screams through the thin walls and of their closely spaced houses and wanted to know what had happened. When Ma and Ba told them, it seemed as if the whole village poured out of their homes. "Never-ending mountain, the old man of the moon, changing your fortune," the neighbors said. "You better find her or else she will never return. Foolish Min Li, she is trying to do the impossible." Each villager pointed and nodded toward the direction that they had seen Min Li last. Some of them had seen her heading home, others toward the rice fields. But finally, a small boy was heard. "Min Li left toward Fruitless Mountain," he said. "I saw her with her little pack. She went that way." And so with the villagers waving them goodbye, Ma and Ba walked toward Fruitless Mountain, their dark shadows trailing behind them in the moonlight. But when they reached the mountain, they looked at each other uncertainly. "Where did she go from here?" Ba wondered, and he lit the lantern in his hand. The soft light seemed to warm the air and soften the growing darkness. "Here," Ma cried out, pointing to the ground. "There are footprints going toward the woods. Maybe they are Min Li's." Ba looked at the footprints. There was another mark accompanying them, a long pulling line. Ba pointed at them. "What is that?" he wondered. "Maybe Min Li was dragging a walking stick," Ma said. "The footprints could be hers." Ba looked again at the footprints. "They seemed small and nimble. Perhaps they are," Ba said. "Let's follow them." And so they did. Chapter 8. Min Lee woke up when the sun was high in the sky and burning with light. Even in the shade of the forest, Min Lee's black head burned hot, and as she woke up, she looked at her jug of water. Since she had used some of it for her compass and had drunk some during her night walk, it was only half full. She sipped it and tried not to think about Ma and Ba or finding her note. I hope they understand, Min Lee said to herself, shifting the weight of the water jug on her shoulders uncomfortably. Min Lee walked west again. A couple of moments later, she sipped her jug again. She tried to drink sparingly, but even through the leaves of trees, the yellow sun glared down at her. Soon her empty jug bounced against her arm when she heard a faint noise running through the trees. That's water trickling, she said to herself as she turned toward the sound. There's water here somewhere. And soon she noticed a small stream running with clear, sparkling water, and she eagerly bent down to drink and fill her jug. But as soon as Min Lee tasted the water, she spit it out. Salt water, Min Lee exclaimed. This water is salty. As she sat back, Min Lee began to wonder, how is this stream salty? I am far from the ocean. This is very strange, and unable to contain her curiosity, Min Lee forgot about her thirst and began to follow it. The stream widened and deepened, becoming more of a river than a stream. And just as Min Lee began to think that she should return to her journey, she began to hear deep moans that gently shook the earth. Who's there? Min Lee shouted. Help! A muffled voice whimpered. Can you help me? I'm coming, Min Lee called, and she quickly put down her compass on the side of the water and waded in. The water was warm, like bath water, and clear as glass. Min Lee could see her feet and all the stones and leaves at the bottom of the stream. As she moved toward the voice, the water rose higher and higher, to her knees, and then almost to her neck. Are you still there? The voice asked plaintively. Please help me. I'm coming, Min Lee called again. She took a deep breath and dove toward the voice. The salt water stung her eyes as so she closed them tightly until she broke through the surface. And when she finally opened her eyes, Min Lee almost sank back underwater with shock, because there in front of her was a dragon. That's it for today.